Hey everyone, welcome to the next episode in my series of how to play Warhammer 40K 7th edition. As always, my name is Jay. Now let me start off by please asking you that if you see any value in this series, please consider supporting my Patreon campaign, link in the description below. I'm hoping to raise funds through my Patreon campaign so that I can make sure that you guys get this series as regular as possible, at least 2 episodes a month, as it takes a long time to film and edit, unfortunately. With that being said, let's get started. This week's episode is all about Flamer template weapons. You see, in Warhammer 40K 7th edition, not all weapons require dice to hit. You don't just simply roll dice and then see if you hit the individuals. Some use templates instead of dice. And there's basically 2 types of template weapons. There are blast template weapons, represented here by this small blast template and a large blast template. And then there are Flamer templates, represented by this Flamer template, which is approximately 8 inches long and teardrop shaped. And today I'll be discussing how to use Flamer templates. In the next week's episode, I will be talking about how to use blast template weapons. So let's get started on Flamer templates. So how do you know if a weapon has a Flamer template? Pretty straightforward, it doesn't have a range. Instead of a range, it will have the word template. So instead of, the normal 12 inches, 36 inches, 48 inches, it just says the word template. Pretty straightforward. Flamer templates still have a strength, still have an AP, and still have a type. Typically it's either assault or heavy. But there's other types called Torrent and Hellstorm, which I will be discussing later in this video. So that's how you know if a weapon is a Flamer template. It just simply has the word template instead of range. Still strength, still an AP, still a type. Pretty straightforward stuff. But how do you use a Flamer template instead of a normal gun? And that's what I'm going to discuss in this video. So simply, first of all, you have to have a guy who uses a Flamer template. For example, this Imperial Fists Space Marine has a Flamer weapon. So he uses a Flamer template. There are several steps you must take into account when using Flamer template weapons. The first one is placing the template. Second one is counting the number of individual models of your opponents that are partially or completely under the template, and that is essentially the number of hits from that weapon. And then you roll to wound as normal, as you normally would do with other guns, comparing the strength of the gun to the toughness of the individual being wounded or the group. And finally, the saving rolls made by your opponent if they have access to any. And we'll be going over all these steps in this week's video. So, the first step in the process of using a Flamer template is placing the template. Now, this is actually where the most rules apply for using Flamer templates. The first rule is that when placing a Flamer template, it cannot cover any friendly models. So for this example, if the Flamer template is in the back of the group, as you can see, it cannot use it because it cannot flame over his friends. And to use a Flamer template, you simply place the template so that the small end of the template is touching the base of the individual firing and over your opponents. And as I said, you can't have any friendly models in the way. So what does this mean? Typically, if you want to use a Flamer template, you want them to be in the front of the squad. Because that way, if they're in the front of the squad, like you can see here, they can easily place that Flamer template so that the small end is touching them, large end over your opponent, and no friendly models in between. The second rule when placing a Flamer template is that you have to maximize the number of individuals in your opponent's squad under the template. Sometimes in a normal game, you can place a template so that it could hit multiple squads of individuals. For example here, this Flamer being used by an Imperial Fist Tactical Marine can be placed so that it hits orcs, or it hits the Garrote squad behind the orcs. However, when placing the template, you don't maximize the number of bodies in general, you have to maximize the number of individuals in the target unit. So you have to declare, in this example, which of the 2 squads are you firing at? Are you firing at the orcs, or are you firing at the Garrotes? If you fire at the orcs, you have to place the template so it maximizes the number of individuals in the orc squad underneath the template, and any models in the Garrote squad that you can also touch is a bonus. Or you can declare the Grot Squad as your primary target and place it so that it maximizes the number of individuals under the Grot Squad, and any orc you hit is also a bonus. The second reason why you must declare your primary target is that typically Flamer templates are used first in the shooting phase to maximize the number of individuals that you're going to hit. So, all the other members in the squad have to fire at your primary target. So if you declare the orcs in this example, the rest of the members of the squad also have to fire at the orcs, or the grots, depending on whichever one you choose. And as I said, unfortunately, you can't place the template in an intermediate area to cover a large amount of grots and orcs. You have to choose one or the other. And that's essentially placing Flamer templates in a nutshell. Now, one of the really cool benefits of Flamer templates in 7th edition, now this was a huge change between 6th edition and 7th edition, is that in 6th edition, if you were flaming a squad in multiple levels of terrain, for example, in this example, you can clearly see that there are orcs on the top floor and on the main floor of this piece of terrain. Now in 6th edition, you had to choose which floor you were going to flame, but in 7th edition, all template weapons affect all floors equally. So you simply place the template covering as many individuals as possible, and then you get to add up the ones on the top floor and on the main floor. Both floors are hit by this Flamer template weapon. And that makes Flamer templates even more awesome in Warhammer 40K 7th edition. Now, another question that I get asked frequently is what happens if there are more than one Flamer templates in a squad? Pretty straightforward. If the template weapons have the same profile, they're fired at the same time. So for example, if there are two Flamers in the squad of Tactical Marines, one on the left and one on the right as you can see here, and they both have the same exact profile, in this case they both be Strength 4, AP 5, they go at the exact same time. So you simply place one, count the number of individuals under that one, and then place the other one at the same time, count the number of individuals. You can, in this particular case, count the same individuals when firing two or more Flamers at the same time. But there is a rule for this particular scenario. If you're firing two or more templates at the same time, is that you can still only kill individuals that are within range. So let's make an extreme example. In this particular example, the one on the right can only hit the closest orc boy, and the one on the left can only hit the closest orc boy. So though they get 2 hits total, 1 plus 1, and they could possibly get 2 wounds, they can only still kill that one orc boy. If they roll 2 wounds, no matter how many your opponent fails, they can only kill that one orc boy that is within range. And similar to other guns, you still require line of sight to the squad you're firing at when placing your template. The next step when firing template weapons, specifically Flamer template weapons, is to count the number of individuals under the template weapon. So you just look at the template and look at any individual in your opponent's squad that is partially or entirely under that template. Count out the number of individuals, and that is the number of hits. And as I mentioned, if you're firing at multiple level terrain, you add up all the levels of the terrain when placing that template, and that is your number of hits. Now, what would happen if you have multiple Flamers in the same squad or on the same model that have different profiles? It's pretty simple. You fire one at a time, so you choose whichever of the Flamer templates you want, declare your primary target, place that template, equal number of hits, roll to wound, etc., and then the other template gets to go. They don't get to go at the same time. And a lot of the time, the first template will kill the individuals that the second template could theoretically hit. So always take that in consideration when placing the templates in whatever order you want. The next step is rolling to wound. So now that you've got the number of hits, you simply compare the strength of the weapon to the toughness value of the majority of the squad or the individual you're firing at, and roll to wound. And as I said, if the strength of the weapon is equal to the toughness of the individual, you need a 4. If it's higher, you need 3 or 2, and if it's lower, you'll need a 5 or 6. All these values are in the previous video in the shooting phase, so I'm not going to go over them in extreme detail, but it acts in the exact same way as any other weapon in the shooting phase. And as I said, after you roll to wound, now you go to the saving throws. Now, as I mentioned in the previous video, there are 3 types of saving throws that your opponent can take. The first one, and the most commonly taken, is armor saves. The second one is cover saves. The third one is invulnerable saves. Now, as always, you compare the AP value of the Flamer template to the armor save of the individual being taken. And as a normal shooting attack, you start with the individuals closest to the model firing at that squad. So you simply compare. If the AP value of the Flamer template is equal to or less than the armor save, that individual does not get an armor save from this particular shooting attack. So for this example, when the Flamer template from the Imperial Fist Tactical Marine is flaming Orc Boys, the Flamer template is AP 5. 5 is equal to or less than the armor value of 6 for the Orc Boy, so they don't get an armor save in this particular instance. Now the next type of save is called cover saves, but Flamer templates in Warhammer 40K 7th edition have a special rule called Ignores Cover, which basically means that cover saves cannot be taken against Flamer templates of any type. So, in this particular instance, if an Orc Boy is in cover and gets flamed and hit and wounded by a Flamer template, he does not get a cover save despite the fact that he is in cover, because they have the Ignores Cover special rule. So he doesn't have an armor save, he doesn't have a cover save. Then third, you must ask yourself, does he have an invulnerable save in this particular instance? No, he does not. Orcs don't get invulnerable saves these days. So the Orc Boy is dead as a result of any wound caused by this particular Flamer template. And as always, you just look one step at a time. Do they get an armor save? Do they get a cover save? In this particular instance, no. And do they have an invulnerable save? And then if they get an armor save, you compare that to the invulnerable save, see whichever one's better, and that individual gets that save. You always choose the best save possible, but as I said, against any Flamer template, no cover saves. They might be able to get an armor save, they might be able to get an invulnerable save, but no cover saves of any type. And that's essentially Flamer templates in a nutshell. But there are two other types of Flamer templates that I'll be going over with today. The first one is called Hellstorm. Now, a Hellstorm is basically the same as a Flamer template, but on steroids. Rather than the straight 8-inch Flamer template that you see here, you instead get a 16-inch gigantic Flamer template, as you can see here. And most things that have this particular type of Flamer template are just gigantic, crazy titans and vehicles. So, for example, this Imperial Knights Acheron has a Hellstorm template. Now, this Hellstorm template would be placed in a similar fashion, but it would be placed in the weapon itself because it is a vehicle. But in a very similar fashion, place the template, count the number of individuals under it. Obviously, you can't place over any friendly terrain, obviously can't place over friendly models. Count up the number of individuals in your opponent's army that are under it or partially under it. Roll the wound, remove casualties, etc. The final Flamer template that I will be discussing today is called the Torrent Flamer. Now, Torrent Flamers act in a very similar fashion to a normal Flamer, but it is placed up to 12 inches away from the model firing it. For example, this Grey Knight's Dread Knight has a heavy incinerator, which is a Torrent Flamer. So the person using the Dread Knight can place the template as much as they want up to 12 inches away from the model firing. What this does is help bridges the gap between the model and your opponent's models to help them flame some models from a distance. And then it simply place the template. As I said, the smaller end is closer to the model firing it, and then you can angle it accordingly. But the rule is the smaller end of the Flamer template has to be closer to the firing model than the large end. And then you can put it however you wish, within 12 inches, and follows the same rules. Count the number of individuals partially or entirely under it, roll the wound, and saving accordingly. There are two other cool rules that have to do with Flamer templates, but I'll be covering them both in future videos. The first one is called Wall of Fire, which basically means that these Flamer templates are awesome when firing Overwatch in the assault phase, but I'll be covering that in the future video covering the assault phase. Another cool rule is that you can actually flame your Flamers inside open-topped vehicles. And once again, I'll be discussing that when I will be discussing open-top vehicles in a future video. So that's Flamer templates. So as I said, just to go over one more time, summarize. You place the template so that it maximizes the number of individuals in your opponent's army in the target squad, and it cannot cover any friendly models. Second, count the number of individuals, partially or entirely under that template. That equals your number of hits. Roll the wound as you would any other shooting weapon. And then armor saves or invulnerable saves can be taken against Flamer templates, not cover saves. Once again, compare the AP of the weapon to the armor save to see if they get an armor save. And if the model has any war gear that gives an invulnerable save, they might be able to get an invulnerable save. and then remove the models, as always, closest to the squad firing first. And that's it. That's Flamer template weapons. So I really hope you enjoyed this episode of how to play Warhammer 40K 7th edition. Please leave comments in the comment section down below if I missed anything, or if else you want to add anything more to the Flamer templates of Warhammer 40K 7th edition. And in next week's episode, I will be covering Blast templates. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you really like this series and you want to see it continue, please consider contributing to my Patreon campaign, link in the description below. I'm hoping to raise funds to keep this series going and to keep it regular so that you guys can get as much How to Play 40K and in future more How to Play series as possible. So thank you as always for watching. Until next time, this is Jay saying, happy painting.